They say the devil doesn't come with horns and a tail. Sometimes the devil comes with a polite smile, a valid ID card, and a reference letter from an agency. My name is Chidinma. My husband, Nneka, and I live in a 4-bedroom duplex in Lekki Phase 1. We were the perfect family. Nneka was a successful oil and gas contractor, big and full of life. I ran my own boutique. We had a beautiful 5-year-old daughter named Ada. But like every working couple in Lagos, we needed help. Our previous house girl had left to get married, so I called the agency. They sent Nneka. When Nneka arrived at our gate, she looked harmless. She was young, maybe 20 years old. She wore a faded skirt and a blouse that was too big for her. She carried all her earthly belongings in a Ghana must-go bag. She didn't look up when she spoke. She knelt down to greet me. "Good afternoon, Ma. I am here to work. I will wash, I will clean, I will cook." Her voice was soft. Too soft. It sounded like wind blowing through dry grass. I hired her on the spot. I thought I was lucky. I didn't know I had just opened the door to my husband's grave. For the first 2 weeks, Nneka was a miracle. The house was spotless. The tiles sparkled. My daughter's uniform was always ironed crisp. But the cooking, that was where the magic was. Or so we thought. Nneka's soups were incredible. The aroma would fill the house from the gate. Banga, oha, egusi she cooked like an old grandmother from the village. My husband Nneka, who usually ate light because of his blood pressure, started eating heavy. He would rush home from work just to eat Nneka's food. He stopped eating my food entirely. "Chidi," he would say, wiping oil from his mouth. "This girl has golden hands. Don't enter the kitchen again. Let her handle it." I felt a twinge of jealousy, but I ignored it. I was busy at the shop. I was happy to have the rest. But by the 3rd month, things started to change. Nneka started losing weight. Not healthy weight loss. He looked drained. His skin, usually dark and glowing, turned ashy and gray. He stopped going to the gym. He stopped playing with Ada. He would come home, eat Nneka's food, and fall into a deep, coma-like sleep on the sofa. Meanwhile, Nneka was changing too. The scrawny village girl was filling out. Her skin became smooth and lighter. Her hair grew thick. She started walking with a strange confidence. She wasn't kneeling anymore. She would look me in the eye, and for a split second I would see a flicker of something mocking in her gaze. One Tuesday evening, I came home early. The house was quiet. Nneka was asleep on the couch, snoring loudly. He looked so small. His clothes looked too big for him, as if he had shrunk overnight. I went upstairs to check on Ada. She was playing in her room with her dolls. "Mummy?" Ada whispered, pulling my hand. "I don't like Aunty Nneka." I sat on the bed. "Why, baby?" "She cooks nice rice for you." Ada shook her head. Her eyes were wide with fear. "She doesn't sleep in her room, Mummy." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She sleeps in the boys' quarter." "No," Ada said. "At night, when you and Daddy are sleeping, I see her. She goes to the backyard. She talks to the box." "What box?" I asked, a cold chill running down my spine. "The round box under her bed," Ada whispered. "The one that cries." I froze. "A box that cries?" Ada nodded. "Yes, it cries like a baby. But sometimes it cries like Daddy." My daughter's words hung in the air like smoke. "It cries like Daddy." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Nneka, listening to his breathing. It wasn't normal breathing. It was shallow and raspy, like a machine running out of fuel. I looked at his face in the dim light of the air conditioner. His cheeks were sunken. His collarbones were protruding sharply through his skin. My husband, who used to be a giant of a man, felt fragile. I touched his arm. It was cold, not cool cold, like stone. I looked out the window towards the boys' quarter at the back of the compound. The light in Nneka's room was off, but the curtains were moving. There was no breeze that night. The air was stagnant. Yet the curtains fluttered as if someone or something was pacing back and forth behind them. I knew I had to check, but I couldn't do it while she was there. Nneka had eyes like a hawk. She was always watching. The opportunity came 2 days later. It was a Saturday morning. "Aunty," Nneka said, standing at the kitchen door. She was glowing. Her skin looked like she had just applied expensive lotion. She looked healthier than ever. "The gas has finished. I need to go to the refilling station." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay, take the cylinder. Here's money for transport." I watched her from the upstairs window as she rolled the heavy gas cylinder out of the gate. She moved with unnatural strength for a girl her size. As soon as the gate locked behind her, I moved. I grabbed the spare key bunch from Nneka's drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped them twice. Clatter. The sound echoed in the silent house. I froze, waiting for the front door to open, waiting for her to come back. Silence. I ran downstairs barefoot so I wouldn't make noise. I went out the back kitchen door into the compound. The boys' quarters stood separate from the main house. Usually it was just a room, but today it felt like a shrine. As I got closer to her door, the temperature dropped. The Lekki sun was blazing hot, 32 degrees, but standing in front of Nneka's door, I shivered. It was freezing. I tried the handle, locked. I fumbled with the bunch of keys. Click. The third key worked. I turned the lock and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the smell of a young girl's room. It didn't smell of body spray or soap. It smelled of wet earth. It smelled like a freshly dug grave after rain. And underneath that, the sickly sweet smell of rotting flowers. I stepped inside. The room was dark. She had covered the windows with thick black cloth, blocking out every ray of sunlight. I fumbled for the light switch, but the bulb had been unscrewed. I used my phone torchlight. The beam cut through the darkness. The room was disturbingly empty. No clothes on the hanger. No shoes, no personal items. Just a mattress on the floor and a small wooden stool. It didn't look like anyone lived there. It looked like a waiting room. I knelt down beside the mattress. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear blood rushing in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. "The box under the bed," Ada had said. I shined the light under the mattress. There was nothing there, just dust. My heart sank. Was Ada imagining things? Was I going crazy? Then I noticed something. The tiles in the corner of the room, near the wardrobe, looked uneven. The grout between them was fresh, darker than the rest. I crawled over to the corner. I tapped the tile. Hollow sound. I used my fingernails to pry at the edge of the tile. It came loose easily. It wasn't cemented down. It was just placed there. I lifted the tile. Underneath there was a hole dug into the concrete foundation of the BQ, and sitting inside the hole, wrapped in a piece of red velvet cloth, was a large calabash. It was an old calabash, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Lizards, eyes, knots. The lid was sealed shut with black candle wax. I reached out to touch it. My hand hovered inches from the calabash. The air around it was vibrating. I could feel heat radiating from it, like a hot iron. And then I heard it. A sound coming from inside the sealed calabash. It was faint, muffled, but I heard it clearly. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was inside. Something was trying to get out. I leaned closer, pressing my ear near the wax seal. "Help me!" I screamed and fell back. The voice was tiny. It sounded like a mosquito buzzing, but the tone, the cadence, the accent. It wasn't a mosquito. It was my husband. It was Nneka. I scrambled backward, hitting the wall. "Nneka?" I whispered, looking at the calabash. "Chidi," the tiny voice squeaked from inside the gourd. "It's hot. It's so hot in here." I grabbed the calabash. It was heavy, surprisingly heavy. I had to open it. I had to see. I dug my nails into the black wax sealing the lid. It was hard, but I chipped away at it, piece by piece. My fingers were bleeding, but I didn't stop. I broke the seal. I gripped the lid. "Nneka, hold on!" I cried. I pulled the lid off. A puff of red smoke hissed out, smelling of sulfur and burnt hair. I coughed, waving the smoke away. I shined my light inside the calabash. I will never forget what I saw until the day I die. Sitting at the bottom of the calabash, on a bed of cotton wool and cowrie shells, was a man. But he was tiny, no bigger than a garden egg. He was naked, curled into a fetal position. He looked up at the light, shielding his eyes with tiny hands. It was Nneka, my big, strong husband, reduced to the size of an insect. But the horror wasn't just that he was small. It was that he was translucent. I could see through his skin. I could see his tiny beating heart. I could see his veins. He was fading. "She is eating me," the tiny Nneka whispered, his voice sounding like dry leaves. "Every time she eats." I get smaller. Just then I heard a sound from the main gate, the heavy metallic clang of the gate lock opening, and then singing. "Jehovah is your name. Jehovah is your name." It was Nneka's voice. She was back. The sound of Nneka's voice froze my blood. Mighty warrior, great in battle, she was singing a worship song, but the tone was wrong. It was low, guttural, and mocking. It sounded like a hyena laughing in the dark. I heard the heavy gas cylinder rolling on the concrete driveway. Rumble, rumble. Stop. She was at the door of the boys' quarter. I looked at the tiny, translucent version of my husband inside the calabash. He was shivering, his tiny hands covering his face. "Don't let her take me," he squeaked. "Please, Chidi." I couldn't leave him there. If I put the calabash back in the hole, she would finish him off tonight. I made a split-second decision. I grabbed the calabash. I shoved it deep inside my blouse, pressing the cold, vibrating gourd against my stomach. I pulled my wrapper high to hide the bulge. I quickly replaced the loose tile. I smoothed the dust over it with my trembling hand. I turned off my phone light. The darkness swallowed the room again. I heard Nneka's key slide into the lock of the BQ door. Click. The handle turned. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I pressed myself flat against the wall behind the door. The door opened inward, shielding me for a second. A slice of sunlight cut across the dark room. Nneka's shadow fell on the floor. It was long and twisted. It didn't look like the shadow of a girl. It looked like a beast with horns. She stood in the doorway, sniffing the air. I smell perfume, she whispered. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was deep. Expensive perfume. Madam is here? She stepped into the room. I saw my chance. As she moved towards the bed, I slipped out from behind the door. I didn't run. Running makes noise. I slid out like a ghost, my bare feet making zero sound on the concrete. I rounded the corner of the BQ and ducked behind the giant black water tank. I heard Nneka inside the room. "Where is it?" She hissed. Then a sound of rage. She started throwing things. "Who took the harvest?" I ran. I sprinted across the backyard, clutching the calabash to my chest. I burst into the kitchen door, locking it behind me with shaking hands. I leaned against the door, sliding down to the floor, gasping for air. Inside my shirt, the calabash was vibrating violently. The tiny Nneka was crying. But the horror wasn't over. I looked towards the living room. My husband was still there. The Nneka on the couch. The one who had been eating Nneka's food. The one who was snoring. If the real Nneka was in the calabash, then what was sleeping on my sofa? I stood up slowly. I walked into the living room. The air conditioner was humming. The man on the couch looked exactly like my husband. He had the same beard, the same tribal marks, the same potbelly. But now that I held his soul in my shirt, I saw the truth. I walked closer. "Nneka?" I whispered. The thing on the couch didn't wake up. It just kept snoring. But the snore didn't sound like air moving through a throat. It sounded like wind blowing through an empty tunnel. Hoo-oo-oo, hoo-oo-zoo. I reached out and touched his arm. It didn't feel like skin. It felt like dough. Like wet, cold, pounded yam that had been molded into the shape of a man. I pressed my finger into his arm. My finger didn't stop at the muscle. It sank into his flesh. His skin didn't bounce back. The dent remained there, like I had poked a piece of clay. I covered my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. This wasn't a man, it was a doll. A golem made of Juju and mud, wearing my husband's clothes. Suddenly, the thing on the couch stopped snoring. Its eyes snapped open. But they weren't human eyes. They were completely black. No whites, no pupils. Just two pools of black oil. It turned its head towards me. The movement was jerky, like a puppet on strings. "Give it back," the thing groaned. It wasn't Nneka's voice. It was Nneka's voice coming out of the doll's mouth. "Give me back the calabash." The front door of the house banged open. Bam! I spun around. Nneka was standing in the doorway, but she wasn't hiding it any more. Her eyes were glowing red. Her teeth were jagged and yellow. Her fingernails had elongated into claws. She wasn't a village girl. She was an ancient spirit, an Ogbonge. She smiled, and the room temperature dropped to freezing. "You think you can steal from me in my own house?" She laughed. "I have fed that doll for 3 months. It is almost ready to become him. And once it becomes him, I will be the madam of this house." She took a step forward. "Give me the soul, Chidinma, or I will trap you in a bottle next." I stood frozen in the middle of the living room. On one side, the demon Nneka, locking the front door with her claws extended. On the other side, the clay doll that looked like my husband, stumbling off the couch with black oil leaking from its eyes. "Give me the gourd," Nneka commanded again. Her voice shook the glass windows. "He is not your husband anymore." "He is meat?" The clay doll lunged at me. It moved unnaturally fast. It grabbed my ankle with a hand that felt like wet, cold dough. Its grip was crushing. I fell hard onto the tiled floor, the calabash sliding up my chest but staying trapped inside my shirt. "Run!" The tiny voice of the real Nneka screamed from inside the calabash. "Chidi, run!" I kicked at the doll. My foot sank into its chest. It was like kicking thick mud. The indentation stayed there, but the doll didn't let go. It began to climb up my leg, its mouth opening wide to bite me. Its teeth were made of broken razor blades. I looked around frantically for a weapon. My eyes landed on the TV stand. Beside the Bible, there was a large bottle of Goya extra virgin olive oil, the one we had taken to the MFM camp for blessing last December. Anointing oil, I scrambled backward, dragging the heavy clay monster with me. Nneka saw what I was reaching for. Her eyes widened in fear. "Don't touch it," she shrieked, diving towards me. She was too late. I grabbed the bottle. I didn't unscrew the cap. I smashed the neck of the bottle against the edge of the TV stand. Crack. Glass flew everywhere. "In the name of Jesus," I screamed. I splashed the holy oil all over the clay doll clinging to my leg. The reaction was instant and violent. Hiss. It sounded like pouring water into hot oil. The clay doll didn't just burn, it boiled. The wet dough flesh started to bubble and melt. The black oil in its veins turned into gray smoke. The thing screamed a sound that was a mix of a man's cry and a pig's squeal. Its grip loosened. Its fingers dissolved into sludge on my ankle. Across the room, Nneka screamed too. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Because the ritual was connected, the fire burning the doll was burning her too. Her skin started to crack. The beautiful light skin she had stolen from my husband peeled away like old paint, revealing the charred black wood underneath. She wasn't human. She was a carving brought to life. "You foolish woman," Nneka gasped, smoke pouring from her mouth. "You cannot save him. He is too small." I stood up, shaking the melting remains of the doll off my leg. I held the broken bottle like a dagger. "Get out of my house," I commanded. My voice was no longer shaking. I was a mother defending her family. "Get out." Nneka glared at me with one remaining red eye. Her body was crumbling into ash and sawdust. The spiritual link was broken. She could not exist here without the vessel. With a final ear-splitting shriek, she exploded into a cloud of black dust. The dust swirled in the air for a second, then was sucked out of the window by a violent wind. Silence fell over the house. The clay doll was just a pile of smelly mud on the floor. Nneka was gone, but the nightmare wasn't over. I pulled the calabash out of my shirt. I looked inside. The tiny Nneka was lying at the bottom, panting. He was faint, almost invisible now. The stress of the battle had almost faded him away completely. I didn't wait. I didn't clean up the mud. I didn't change my clothes. I ran to the car. I placed a calabash on the passenger seat and drove like a madwoman to our pastor's house. It took 7 days of fasting and prayer, 7 days of the pastor pouring oil into the calabash and calling Nneka's spirit back. Slowly, the tiny figure in the gourd began to grow. First, he became the size of a doll, then a child. Finally, on the 7th night, the calabash shattered on its own. Crack. Nneka lay on the floor of the prayer room, full-sized, naked, breathing. He was alive, but he was different. He never regained his weight. He remained thin and frail. His hair turned completely white. even though he was only 40. And he stopped eating. He developed a phobia of food cooked by anyone other than me. If we go to a restaurant, he shakes. If a friend offers him a drink, he vomits. He remembers everything. He remembers being in the Calabash. He remembers the darkness. He remembers being eaten, piece by piece. We moved out of that house in Lekki. We couldn't stay there. Sometimes when I am sweeping our new house, I find things. A piece of red velvet cloth, a cowrie shell, a small lump of clay, and I know she is watching. So please, I am begging you, watch your domestic staff. Watch who you bring into your home. If your children say they see something, believe them. And if your husband starts loving the house girl's food more than yours, check under the bed before you become the next ingredient in the Calabash.